just here in the independent free town of Christiania. Now, many people will know this, of course, as a neighbourhood of Copenhagen, but for many it is something far, far more. On the 18th of May 1971, after the student movement of 1968 that looked to push back against many of the European governments, this former military barracks was taken over. Originally, the idea was to create a junk playground for the local children to play in, but as the summer went on into August and beyond, people started to move in, and this became the Freetown of Christiania, its own independent state, separate as far as they were concerned from Denmark and the Danish laws. Now, common law is what has ruled pretty much ever since. There have been agreements on and off with the government of Denmark for their recognition. In fact, in 2013 was the first time that those within Christiania have had to pay rent. And the reason for this is because of a deal that was thought out between both sides, so that Christiania's claim to the land was actually recognised by the Danish government. After over 40 years of being here, Denmark effectively said, yes, the land is yours. Now, does this mean that Christiania is recognised as its own country across the world? Of course not. But it is a big step for the country that theoretically still owns this land to say, actually the land is yours, you just have to pay rent, effectively maintenance, which actually goes back into Christiania itself and continues with its development, is a massive, massive step. In fact, Christiania itself actually had its own currency from 1971 up until about 2004 called the lon. It came in brass, silver and copper, where it was used very similarly to the John Wick films. Effectively, one lon is one favour. It was kind of payment, almost like tokens that you'd find at many fairgrounds. That was phased out around 2004 as the krona was being used much more by many people, and of course the introduction of digital currency kind of came in to replace that. You can still pick up that currency. It is still there, more symbolically and for collectors, and a nod to the past. But don't be surprised if there's the younger Christianians who have no idea of this currency. It is something of the past, a little like mentioning a farthing to somebody in England that is under the age of 50. You're unlikely to get any real recognition, and the same thing here. But it is an amazing country, city, Freetown to explore when you're here, because it truly is the artist's quarter. It is where you'll find creativity, artistry, and a true want for free living. An idea of being able to express yourself truly according to what you believe, with non-violence and with a sense of real community. In effect, this is a hippie commune taken to its absolute limits, one that you should absolutely visit if you're in Europe and around the area. Now, when you're walking through Christiania, you will get a true feeling of a hippie commune, which of course it is, but just something a little bit more. This free living, this idea of peace and love that actually truly stayed with this community far beyond where we felt it across Europe many years ago. And it's just an amazing feeling, almost a step into the past, but potentially what should be our future for many, many reasons. Now, when you look down upon Christiania from up here by the lake, you can see that it feels almost like both incredibly organised and disorganised. Many times it is said that Christiania is the last lawless country in Europe. I disagree. There are laws, there are common laws, there are laws of decency that underpin this entire place. There's many times people talk of violence, especially if you go out into Copenhagen. That seems now firmly in the past for Christiania, and even when it was happening, it was only a specific area, much like any country, any city you would expect. For the most part, Christiania now, and even back then, was a place of love, peace, creativity, and just being able to live the way you truly want to. I'm just along in the area that is formerly incredibly well known as Pusher Street. This was the area that was pretty much a no-go for tourists and travellers when they came to Christiania. It was where you could get cannabis. Now, much as the use of cannabis, weed, everything in Christiania is quite open, and although it's illegal in Denmark, in Christiania, it is very much kind of thought of as something that is pretty much okay. There's no hard drugs here, but cannabis was fine. However, every month or so, year or so, the police would come in, move it all out, and it would come back pretty soon. But that all changed in 2024 when a young 30-year-old resident was shot and killed on Pusher Street. And the residents here specifically stating that is not part of Christiania, that the dealers here did not represent them, they did not show the true freedom and peace and non-violence that this society truly wanted, decided they needed help from the Danish police. And in a symbolic move, they actually all the way down Pusher Street here to the other end, where there's now an ice rink for the season, actually dug up what was a lovely cobbled street as a true statement of Pusher Street is not just gone. We're making sure that it is physically gone. You don't get to come around here anymore. You don't get to cause the violence that you once did. And this has now transformed it into a far safer area. In fact, there are many parts along here. The fact that I'm even filming along here is a big change. You previously have seen big graffiti that had camera on it and then a cross through. You did not film along Pusher Street. That is very much changed. Now, feel free to photograph, to film, and show the true meaning of what Christiania is meant to be.